Second prophecy. Cathar Love 136. Two years ago, September 2016, I did a video at Montsegur on the mountain. It's Cathar Love 103, a warning message from Montsegur was the title. And what happened, 1 or 2 days prior to that, I was woken up at night with all this information swimming around my head. So, as I do, I've got to get up and write it down, and it only took about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to write it down, and that was it, and back into bed. So then I really read it the next day, and it was a warning concerning our climate change and what's going to happen if we don't do something about it. And so, lo and behold, 2 nights ago, 3 nights ago, a similar thing happened. And again, this information, which happens every so often, is all swimming around my head, but it sounds interesting and good, and I know what's going on. So I happily am, I'm more than happy, I'm honoured in fact, to get up and write it down. And this time it took a bit longer. I started at 5:30 and I was finished by about 7:30. And so it's a second warning concerning the world and where it's heading with our 7.44 billion population. So with the climate change, which most agree is man-made, and we know there's only 2 degrees, and we've got that tipping point where it's downhill, not all the way, but if we don't do something about it, and something drastic, such as sucking the CO2, technologically somehow sucking the CO2 from the atmosphere and sequestering it in a safe place, being able to reflect the heat of the sun, various ways to stop global warming. And you know, even if you roll a rock off the mountain and it goes down the other side, you can still push it back up the mountain, but it's a lot harder. And I think really this is probably what will happen. The climate change, the effects will really be so bad, and the ocean will start to rise, and when it's so obvious to people that it's not obvious, even at the moment, then I believe the intelligent part of science will get together and make a worldwide effort to do something about it, and hopefully not have a push off or stave off somehow a catastrophe which will happen if we don't do something about it. So you all know what's going on. I mean, since 1970, just a few things. Since 1970, about half the vertebrates, the birds, animals in the planet, half, 50%, have become extinct. Now lots of them are small and minute and we don't even think about them, but that's the plain fact. We're losing topsoil faster than we can replace it. Much of the world's oceans have been turned into underwater deserts. We pour 9 million tons of plastic annually into the ocean. the aquifers, the water, underground water, which normally is replenished by rain and it soaks down. We're using up the aquifers closer than it could be filled with the rain. In New South Wales, where I am in Australia at the moment, we're now in our worst drought in 100 years. So, and we all know the floods, fires and things that are happening in different parts of the world which are abnormal. So things are moving down that path and it's becoming reasonably obvious. So I've had these warnings and my ripe old age, they're not going to personally affect me very much. But I don't have any problems with dying. I think the best, you know, as a Cathar and knowing in the world of spirit, it's a great place. It's a state of being as we are here. It's got its, nothing's great, it's got limitations. You know, we can't eat and drink and enjoy our bodies and sex and all the different things that we can do. The pleasures that we have, swimming and what have you, being disembodied, energy, they can't do that. So there's pleasures we have that they don't have. But there's things that can happen there and wondrous things that happen there that we can't do here. And so each is a state of being. And the death is to be welcomed by anybody, no matter who it is. It's the pain or the discomfort or the dying period before you die. That could be a problem. It could be a real problem for people, especially if you're starving and your family's going without and they're starving in front of your eyes. This can be quite terrible. But actual death itself, the best thing in reality, the best thing that can happen to anybody is the fact that they die. Because then they're going to the world of spirit and you're heading home. So I grieve like anybody else. So many of my friends of my age have died. In fact, about 90% of them, not more, 95% of them are dead. And I miss some of them, not all of them, but I miss some really. But I don't grieve for them, and because they're doing okay. We're the ones on this planet Earth who are having the hard time, and the good times too at times. But these prophecies, you know, they're dire warnings. But I don't want to make. There's nothing worse than having somebody in front of you and they're pouring out fire and brimstone and doom and gloom. No, we are heading in the wrong direction, but we have the capacity, we have the science, and we have the technology that can reverse these things. Just let's hope we're smart enough, or our children are smart enough, to do this. So I'll go into the first one, which was at Montsegur, which was the 14th of September in 2016. And in September this year, I'll be over there staying at La Pellerin, not for the entire month, for a few weeks. And so if you happen to be at Montsegur at that time, pop in and say hello to Johnny. With further ado, Earth, my mother. I am crying, but so few heed my tears. I am dying, but who know of my fears? With little choice but to save myself, that I may live, that's planet Earth. Yet many will die, as I write myself, as I've done before, and will again. So those will now know who survived the necessary wrath of your mortal mother, Earth. Cataclysm is my saviour. When much will die, many more will cry, yet we will survive. So it means that many of the population are not going to survive this. The World Health and various other bodies have said if we could bring people up to the standard of a person living in Europe, a European standard of living, the ideal population for the Earth would be 2 billion. We are now 7.44 billion. So the second one was the 18th of August. It's a little longer. Instead of goodness and kindness, and each according to his or her need. It's been overpopulation and overproduction, fueled on by gross ignorance and stupid greed. Though we have been already well warned, yet those dire warnings are still being ignored. Warnings by those here wise on earth, as well as those from the deeper beyond. I presume that's extraterrestrials. We bear witness to the poor growing poorer, the homeless with even less for their needs, while the wealthy fatten far wealthier, with no limits in sight for their greed. But dark days and nights they will come. They are already visible on our horizon. For planet Earth is left with no choice but to rebel, by turning our wondrous Earth into an unkind hell. Overpopulation driven on by religion, overproduction urged on by the state. Because this won't ever cease or end, we then have already sealed our fate. So much of Earth's shores will disappear, because melted ice oceans will high rise. Earth's populations will plummet down, as good land sinks beneath the waves. From a wild weather turbulent world abyss, with less land, a less loving planet will emerge, with far fewer people compared to our many, whose saviour will be science and technology. Our planetary history will speak out then of how Mother Earth should have surely been, when our blue planet was once so lush and green. Our own Earth Mother, but with an ungrateful child, us. So between people, religion, state and greed, constantly fueling growth and toxic pollution, we did deeply wound our planet's sweet nature. But now it needs to repair, so we need to prepare. For to make Earth cry means many must die. To return population to that level, to where it will be sustainable. Powerful stuff. It's a warning. Now, I thought, well, what's the... it's not a great deal giving it to me personally, and obviously it's given to me so I can spread the word, so they say. But I think it's time that we all think and realise just where we're at and where we need good government and good science. Those who are in the position to do something about it, because these are warnings. It can be turned around, and it's up to us to do something about it in our own way. As they say, act locally but think globally. But I'm an optimist, and I believe if we have warnings, but I do think, unfortunately, before those hard-headed people we have in the parliaments and the presidents, the prime ministers, and the rulers of the world, some of them are still climate science deniers, climate change deniers, and I feel the Earth will need various cataclysms and catastrophes just to really work these people up. But even President Reagan said that if the world is threatened and we suddenly realise we are threatened, then surely at least then we can all start working together to do something about it, and working together in peace rather than building and selling armaments and our thoughts on war and so forth. I better end now, because otherwise when one thinks about it, one can't help but be saddened by it all, because a lot of it is so unnecessary. Bye for now.